Oh, we're gonna go on some tangents. Don't you worry.
I imagine. Yeah, chat. Welcome to Plat Chat. We're gonna talk about Overwatch. It's gonna be awesome. You're gonna love it. First, we're gonna talk about just general Overwatch because for some reason everyone forgets that this is an actual game, not just a league. So with the game this week, you had the replay feature going live, so we can all watch Sideshow's ranked games from his POV
at
any moment in time.
I'll tell you what, as well. I'm no longer in Plat. Last time when we did this episode, I was genuinely in Plat. Wait, Bren, are you?
Bren is the only one. Bren's the only one.
I dug myself out.
I threw him down to Plat last night, unintentionally, but kind of intentionally.
I just solo queued.
Unintentionally. You've never thrown unintentionally.
You know
I also 1v1 to Fran last night as well,
which is absolutely the dumbest thing ever. I was watching that
as a preliminary.
That was horrific, man.
Actually, the
okay. So I was playing on 200 ping because he's in Denmark.
Okay,
but he didn't just poo on me.
Dude.
He didn't just poo on me. He fucking grabbed me by my throat, pushed me against the wall, opened up my mouth, and then just pooed all inside of me as well.
It's so unnecessary.
It was unfair. Like the dude was straight dunking on me. He was
bullied and humiliated you. I watched the clip on my stream of you just getting dinked without him charging up the shots, and I felt
over
sad
and over again.
He just kept jumping on the railings and jumping on your head.
Yeah.
You know what we need to do? We need to play like all the same hero, and then give Johnny the replay and see if he can figure out which one of us it is that's playing.
That would be great, actually.
It'd actually be pretty easy.
And see if Johnny can figure out who is who.
Well, no, because I wouldn't play like an idiot if I was trying to disguise myself as Bren or Johnny, as Bren or Matt.
Well, that ruins the entire purpose. If you're like, hey, you're supposed to figure out the play styles of each member, and then you changed up the play styles intentionally to throw me off.
Exactly, but that's the funny part is you have to try and figure it out while we're fucking with you.
The whole point of
like Matt would be trying to pull off dumb flanks, but
I would be like popping transcendence in my spawn and like jumping up and down, like
But then it would be too obvious, so you'd be like, no, that can't really be such. It's too obvious.
The McCree patch. We've had a week to play on it now. What do you guys think?
Pretty good.
What do you
think,
Matt?
It's fat.
I think McCree's ridiculous.
I think he's nuts at the moment. Yeah,
he's nuts. Like, dude, I had a thing on Junkertown the other day where like I was just like, when you flick with McCree, but like you kind of get like that pacing down where it was like you kind of shoot, you flick, like it has like that like weight. Like I was just flicking, and it was like I was fanning the hammer. It was like I was like, what is this? Like
I can see the meta next year or in with the next patch, which would be stage 4 theoretically. I can just see like either Sombra McCree or Sombra Doomfist. Some shit to just really fuck with people.
Yeah, because the thing is, and I mentioned this on the last episode as well, is that McCree has such an insane ability to just kill tanks as well. Like the damage output is really strong, and that's why back when I was relevant in 2016, McCree was actually part of the triple tank composition. So like some people are, oh, let's play Soldier because like he has shield spam. But actually fanning the hammering with McCree and just having the ability to headshot people is so good that you can kill tanks effectively as well.
Sorry, the T went down one of my holes.
He just ruined Johnny's amazing point. But I do feel like McCree's been like
that's like classic Bren though. He ruins my good points.
Like when they like they kept nerfing Brig, like each patch there would be a slight Brig nerf, a slight Brig nerf. Like, I feel like for the last, like, 2 or 3 patches, like, there's been, like, little McCree stuff. Like, oh, hey, look, like, we're adjusting, like, the Deadeye. Like, it's going to, like, lock on faster, and it's going to, like, blow more people up. Now he shoots, like, a cannon. It's like he's kind of approaching this, like, oh, no, tier where it's like, is he going to creep too far up?
Yeah, but what's scary is if we get into McCree Brig comp territory.
Yes, and McCree Brig actually has crazy good synergy as well. Yeah. You have the double stuns, and you just shred tanks. Like, can you imagine trying to play dive?
My doctor is calling me. I'm not even
doctor.
Yeah.
So just get away from us.
We did it last episode without you. We're fine.
Hello?
To notify you that due to a certain suspicious activity.
Can you mute your mic?
No, that's your bank calling you.
Phone calling you about your social security.
I'm live streaming as well. I'm live streaming as well, so like what's said cannot be undone. Anyway,
don't read out your social security.
Anyway,
I think McCree's the biggest difference for McCree is that he now does way more tank busting.
Yeah.
Like you just shred. But the thing is, the tank busting ability with McCree was always the fan the hammer. Now you can do it from range.
Yeah.
So it's I don't think it's broken McCree, but it's made him certainly more powerful in that specific place.
Johnny, have you played any ranked? Like, have you noticed like any of the Orisa like quality of life stuff where you can shield while reloading? Like, I played a little bit the other day, and I was like, I almost felt like I completely didn't even realize I couldn't shield while reloading.
Well, it's such a
like,
minor
cool.
change. It hasn't changed the game, you know, but it's just quality of life stuff. So,
but Batista
nice.
hasn't felt like he's much stronger either, giving him more healing and.
Yeah, I mean, it was
Matrix.
just like I said, when do you ever reload with Batiste, or like when do you ever run out of ammo rather on the healing?
I feel like the window needs to be bigger. Like I feel like the window will never be. Yeah,
the Amp Matrix is already a pretty good ability. I think it's so good that it forces the enemy team to disengage,
run away.
Yeah, like that's all you can ask for a static.
But that
ultimate.
just feels lame.
Oh, what do you want? An Amp Matrix on wheels so that you can take it around?
On wheels.
You build up to this like ability, and then it's used to make other people run away. Like,
right, but you have it every 30 seconds. Like Rascal's building up Batiste ults in 45 seconds on average.
Like I want to earn that thing and just start dunking on people through it, like getting like 4Ks. Like
so let the enemy team engage on you before you use it.
Yeah, and then they just play goats and just run me over.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we have balance changes for.
True.
True
then,
that.
What do we think about the Batiste event? The one where you can unlock the skins and stuff. I like when they do that type of stuff.
I actually don't know what it is. I realized I was playing ranked last night, and I was trying to get to 10 wins for some reason, but I didn't know what it did or what was it.
You see the controversy? You see the controversy where they keep like getting in streamers who just don't even play Overwatch?
What do you mean?
As in like the streamer list?
Explain the event first.
So
I don't understand the event.
You can, if you watch streamers, you can earn drops, but it's only specific streamers that they allocate, right?
Right.
And if you win games, you get the skin. I'm pretty sure, but the drops is like sprays or icons or some shit. I actually don't know, but you get it by watching a certain amount of hours of the streams. But the streamers they've chosen, like it's a bunch of like some multinational streamers, but also just streamers who don't play Overwatch anymore. Like some are just chatting streamers. And some of them are people who have been banned before on Overwatch for like screaming about like telling people to kill themselves. So like it's bizarre. It's weird. I don't know who's in charge of it, but this is a direct call out. Put me in the list instead.
Okay. I mean, who are they? Are there any examples?
Yeah, I didn't even hear anything about.
No, I didn't know that this was even a controversy.
Batiste streaming.
While
do we
Bren
want
does research on his own controversy.
We just had the best, arguably the best weekend of Overwatch ever. I don't want to talk about some Baptiste drama on Overwatch TMC. Get on with it.
This is what the people care about, Johnny.
I actually think the people do care more about TMZ than they do.
Well, it is a Plat chat after all.
And then they just put the new PTR patch, which just gives like subtitles. If you
that's the other thing actually as well. The Diva change, right?
Oh,
the Diva defense matrix change. Well, I was playing ranked last night, and holy shit, Diva has turned into a lighthouse. Like Diva's like, it's like she powers on the most high power battery torch in the world whenever she uses defense matrix. It just lights up the whole area in front of her. It's so much better than it was previously. It looks kind of goofy, but it's so much better than it was before.
Yeah, no, you can actually tell when it's being used. Like it's a. And then I like how they added like with the animation for it, like it's actual distance, right? You can kind of see like how far the matrix comes out.
Yeah.
And they obviously shorting it up, I think helps.
Yeah.
Diva does not feel very powerful anymore, though. I don't know how you guys feel. I feel like
I haven't played very much seen it. I don't know.
I feel like she dies pretty quick.
We talked about this last episode, and I feel like it's a pretty big change overall. So the playstyle might just change because she can't just hide around the corners and peek with Matrix as much. She pretty much has to be in the battle with a Reinhardt or a Winston, I think. So
yeah. Let's talk about this week because the first 3 days of matches were just kind of like okay, and then
potato gameplay. Matt, you can say it.
Ignore that. Let's go to the bangers.
It was not good.
That shit.
So I think the winners that we had this week overall were Hangzhou. They have a 2-0 week, 3-0 against Dallas. They beat Seoul Dynasty barely. Like they dunk on them the first two maps. Like
This match I really want to talk about in particular because it comes back to a point we're making, right, in terms of the 12-man rosters. And I was chatting to some of the UK lads recently about this, and in particular Christopher, right, the current head coach for Seoul Dynasty, which is KDG. He rates him so highly. In fact, he rates him, I think, right now as possibly one of the best coaches in the league, simply because he was coached under him. But Christopher was telling me he was the first coach that he worked with that understood the fundamentals of the game and had such a solid grasp of it that he just knew what he was doing and gained the respect of his players. And it was to the point where Christopher was telling me when he was playing on Snakes, whatever the
European contenders team.
Yeah, European contenders team. That all of the players said if KDG goes, like they're just fucked, like because he had such a huge impact. And what he's doing now with this Seoul Dynasty roster has been attempted before, but never successfully to the level that Seoul is having right now. Like in that Hangzhou game, they swap out the entire roster at the half into a completely new roster, and they just full hold them. Like you're swapping out your mentally boomed roster, coming in with something entirely new. They're fresh. They're ready to come back at it. Like,
and they did the same versus San Francisco Shock. And while they did get 4-0'd by San Francisco, it looked a lot closer once they did the substitutions. And I tweeted this right after the game because everyone's like, "Oh, fucking substitutions is so bad." And I'm like, this is a squad that's like utilizing it the right way, and the current narrative is not accurate.
No, I totally disagree. I think if they actually had a team that they had settled on, though, that would be way better than chopping and changing. They would be better than the Spark right now if they had actually stuck to a core roster.
No, I disagree with that so much.
Why do you think? Like, they were better than the Spark, and then they started fucking around with their roster, and now they only have these weird games where they either get shit on or dominate. And that is what you got with Seoul at the moment.
They were better than the Spark because the Spark hadn't really reached their full potential.
Yeah. Two, and why do you think that Seoul wouldn't have had the same trajectory? Like, Spark continued to improve. You saw them here when Seoul were better, and then Spark
I think you can make the case that the Spark have more individual talent.
No, but I'm saying
I disagree.
You can't compare Seoul to Hangzhou in that way. You have to compare Seoul 1 and Seoul 2. To realize, like, oh, what's the best potential of the Seoul before the changes and Seoul after the changes.
When
which
one
has the best potential?
And
I think Matt, quiet. I think I think that Seoul Dynasty has a higher peak potential because they're starting to integrate different members that have like different heroes on different maps. And I think one of the bigger issues with Seoul Dynasty before was that they were pretty one-dimensional. And they had to substitute a lot of players in and out depending on if they were going to run triple tank or triple support.
They still do run the same compositions.
Yeah. No.
Yes, they do.
No.
When Marvel is in, they play Reinhardt. When Fissure comes in, they play Ball and all these DPS stuff. They switch the whole lineup out to do it.
Exactly. So they can be better on different maps if they utilize all the skill set and heroes of all the players on the roster rather than sticking to a 6 that might be good at goats but will suck ass on Numbani.
But that isn't, I don't think that's how rosters work. Rosters aren't just good at goats or good at something else. And that's not how maps work. You can't just play goats an entire map and have the inability to switch over to something else.
And that's why they're utilizing substitutions.
Right, but I think that's bad because then you lock yourself into a situation where you are either going to win a map or get crushed on a map because you don't have the flexibility to adapt to your opponent other than making large wholesale changes in your
and also at halftime, if you're like a coach and you see them bring out a whole new lineup and you watch tape where Fissure comes in on Numbani and they play like Orisa and Wrecking Ball stuff, like I imagine, the other coaches have the VODs of the Overwatch League that they can watch them and be like, hey, this is what we expect them to do. Like, this is what they're going to come out with. They don't move off of it. Like, I feel like we have that over the
word on the street is word on the street is
Bren is our ear to the street here.
These teams, both of these Seoul Dynasty squads, are getting equal scrim time.
Okay,
but does that mean split scrim time or double scrim time? Because in theory, they have 12 players. They could be playing them both at the same time.
There's no way you could.
They're playing them both at the same time.
How is each team getting proper coaching? Like, well, Seoul does have a large coaching.
Seoul has a lot of coaches. But this is what I mean. This is what I'm talking about. The head coach of KDG and why. I mean, Christopher was essentially talking him up like he was the second coming of Christ to me. But he told me an anecdote as well of this guy's commitment to the league and coaching in general. Right, when he was coaching Snakes, when he was in Korea, again, it's a weird time zone. He had to wake up at 4 a.m. every morning, and he wasn't getting paid for this. This is unpaid. So he was working a 9-to-5 manual labor job on top of coaching in the early hours of the morning in Korea, just so he could do it. And he had job offers from other teams, but he didn't take them because of his commitment to this team in general. And just essentially, I mean, it comes down to his loyalty to the players and stuff. This is one of the few examples I've seen. Now, it's such a weird look that we have on the league in general because we never get to see which coaches are good because we don't get to peer behind the veil, right? So we don't know which coaches are actually decent.
Johnny knows.
This is added to my list of one of the guys who I really wasn't on my radar before Christopher was telling me this.
Yeah. No, that's true. It wasn't on mine either.
No, yeah.
But having said that,
just like, he's a cool guy.
I think one of the biggest problems with Seoul is that you never know whether they could have been better by running the same lineup. Like, for example, the lineup they subbed in for Numbani and Havana. Okay, they made some slight changes, but there was a core that they subbed in for Numbani, and then they made some changes for Havana. If they had run that lineup the whole match, would they have been better? It's impossible to tell with Seoul because you can't say, oh, this playstyle changed or this happened because they're making such huge roster movements. So you never, that's so difficult to actually adjust and get better at that point.
I agree with you. I think that the most optimal way to play is you stick to a consistent roster of like 6 or 7 people, right? That you maybe flex in one player here and there. And I think you stick to that roster and you work on that individually. But think of the long term then. Think about the future going past that point. Why is Johnny shaking his head?
Because I disagree, but I'm letting you go on.
Well, I agree with the point because I just don't think, like, think of the scenarios where we've seen these 12-man rosters and they try and utilize them. Valiant, London, Shock. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, Valiant tried
Soul are definitely doing it better. I mean, Soul are doing
way better than anyone else.
Way better than that.
But here's the thing that where I think that there's value in having it is when it starts going next year and beyond, when you start having home and away games, you've got a lot of traveling, and suddenly it's a lot more of a test of endurance regarding just playing in general. Because I mean, it's a difficult scenario. What if you had 2 rosters that could prepare separately for different home and away games?
Yeah, I mean that would be good. At that point, you are just managing 2 teams essentially.
Yeah,
no, I disagree so much. Okay, one, with regarding to like London Spitfire and all of their big squads, correct me if I'm wrong, back then there was a solid meta. There was a solid meta, Mercy Sen, Widowmaker, right?
No, it was way more flexible than it is over the course of the beginning of this year. Last year's meta was way more variable.
We're talking about stage 3, buddy. We're not talking the entire year. We're talking stage 3 right now.
Stage 3 of this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is more diverse meta than it was with 12 members. And so, I'm just saying that from a professional player standpoint, the mindset is so different when it comes to hero swapping and reading the game that if you need a squad that can excel in DPS compositions and you need the one that can excel in tank compositions, I'd happily do that. But if I need to excel in one single meta, put 6 consistent
But then
players
what happens when the meta changes? You got to start from scratch and find a whole new 6 that work together?
No.
What happens when you have to play both comps in one map?
Well, then you have to compromise.
This is my DPS squad, this is my GOAT squad. You need to play.
When they start rolling you a GOAT,
I'm just saying that I think Seoul Dynasty has higher peak potential if they perhaps do some substitutions to maximize their efficiency on one composition on one map.
Okay, so here's a thought experiment then. If this is a concept that could be applied to all teams in the league, like we're arguing the general principle of it, do we think that the San Francisco Shock would be improved by having the full 12 players they started the season with and a system like Seoul has?
Nope.
No, it's player dependent.
That's an obvious no.
Well, it's player dependent, and I think San Francisco Shock, their players are so good when it comes to the DPS heroes and stuff like that as well, that they can realistically make that change more than Seoul, because Seoul, in my mind, has some players that heavily specialize in the GOAT composition. Well, like San Francisco, well, I'd argue like most of the contenders guys who came into that roster.
No, I mean, Illicit is one of the most flexible players they have on that roster. He's like, Illicit is playing the majority of their DPS stuff. He's like the new guy that's come in. I mean, the only argument there would be
I'd say Fleta is not that great at the GOAT compositions.
You think Fleta's more specific to GOATs than Sinatra is? I mean, Sinatra's way more specific
what I
to
said
saying
was
the
I think
opposite.
Fleta is more specific to DPS compositions.
DPS comp.
Oh, right. Okay. I see.
Yeah,
Well, they
and
actually
I think
don't
that
run
someone-
in those scenarios.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, it depends on the players, and I think San Francisco, when you make this comparison, they have players who are way better in playing those dive compositions, even from like earlier last year. So I think you're comparing like apples and pears.
Another team.
Well,
who's
you
been
think
fucking
Rascal Sinatra and fucking
Striker they have on the bench, or
no,
you trying to think of Choi?
I guess Choi as well. Like Rascal Sinatra and Choi, you think those guys are more flexible, can play a wider range
And
of
like
compositions
Michelle Fleta and like
than Michelle Fleta
Munchkin.
and Munchkin or Michelle Fleta Illicit or something? Like, I don't think that's true at all. I think Seoul Dynasty have more flexibility in their players than the San Francisco Shock do. But I think the Shock have been so good because they've narrowed down and nailed a style and fucking dominated it.
Yeah, but I don't think Seoul could realistically reach that high potential, especially where we are at now. And I think they've proven over the course of the season that they might not get to a Vancouver or San Francisco level, and so they're taking precautions to just
Yes, I agree with that.
reach a higher potential.
I think it's something that works for Seoul. I'm concerned that they will fail to reach their potential by making too many swaps, and that people will assume that this is the correct way of playing the game and try and like argue that Titans
there's
Shock
not
and people
one.
should be doing
There's not one true be all, whatever the saying goes. There's
there
you
might
have to
be
look at
next
the
year though.
rosters.
There might be next year, like Bren's saying, with people passing out from travel and
traveling.
stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
The Valiant go
sounds like an
2-0 this
exhausting schedule.
I
Continue.
love the Valiant.
The Valiant, Josh's 8th team in his top 4.
Well, here's the thing with the Valiant. Word on the street is.
The word on the street, yeah.
Word on the street is. I've been asking around. These guys are fucking crushing.
Dunking in scrims.
They are killing the game.
They're they're converting the scrim
But
bucks
I think
into wins.
Insider
real
Bren.
time.
Insane about Valiant, right? It's like they're phenomenal when they're matching teams in DPS mirrors.
That's strange.
As well as their
That's
goats.
really strange.
And that's been our one criticism
Like,
of this
holy
team. They're
moly.
going to be horrible, like in terms of deep.
Yeah, like these guys are killing the game. Like I hate this as well because they shut the bed so early. Like fuck me.
But
like
honestly,
that's so
they
frustrating.
might still be able to make a comeback. They're kind
Yeah.
of in the same
they
situation as
can make
Houston, where if
12,
they
that's-
dominate,
That's phenomenal.
I consider them the favorites over Spark and London after seeing their performance against last week against
definitely.
Shanghai and Titans. I would consider them the favorites because here's the reason.
Yeah, okay.
The Spark are pretty similar to the Titans. They play a shit ton of goats, and their Sombra goats is really poor. And then their DPS comps are gonna get outmatched, I think.
Well,
because the Spark's DPS is middling.
The Spark Sombra comp was better when they had Godsby play Sombra instead of Rhea, but now they switched it because they want to have Godsby just play Zarya 24/7. So now it's kind of been, at least a few times that I've casted, it's been like potato quality. The Valiant have come, like when they made those roster changes with Florida, like were anyone excited for either team?
No, I thought it would be an improvement for both teams, but I didn't expect.
I didn't
this
think it'd
kind
be
of
like a
improvement.
massive improvement for one team. I thought it would be minor improvements and we'd be
Yeah. I went for
along.
drinks with Custer and McGravy the day before they played against the Titans, actually.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was 2 days before they played against the Titans. And they were telling me that they were pretty confident that they were going to win that game. And they were explaining some of the differences that have been going on inside of that team.
The Titans should have lost to the Hangzhou Spark.
Probably. I
if the-
think Spark played a
Almost.
better
If
game.
The Hangzhou Spark do not literally take their offense on Havana and poo all over it, they win that series most likely.
I still
Like-
think Hangzhou is the better team over Valiant. But look, I tweeted it out yesterday that looking at the map pool, I think the Valiant are going to win because it favors them so bad on Thursday's matchup. So
A side point I wanted to make off the back of Valiant having so much success with their new roster is I think it highlights the importance of mentality in Overwatch as well. Because we know for a fact that the Valiant were unhappy playing together.
Yes.
with
Oh,
their
yeah.
roster,
Absolutely.
You know? Like, we
What
know
is
for a
Johnny
fact.
laughing at?
no, because this is also what I tweeted this weekend.
I don't look at your Twitter, but it just goes to show we're on the same bloody page with all of this. But I think, but I'm talking about in terms of chemistry. I don't know what your tweet was referring to. Was it chemistry as well?
Bro, that's any game though. Like anybody who's been on a professional team can tell you, like I would know when we were about to drop people from my teams, when we would get to the hotel and they would book me in the hotel with the guy who was on my team. I'd be like, man, I don't want to stay with that guy. That sucks. Like I'd be like, oh yeah, we're kicking this guy after this one. Like you just kind of get it. Like there's just a vibe around it where, like the bad part of the Valiant is they sat around with that vibe for it's 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, it's funny because this is one of the things that Team UK at the World Cup actually. When I speak to Cruz, he contributes that kind of atmosphere, the team atmosphere of just having the boys and everyone loves playing with each other as a big factor as to why they had so much success. Like a huge factor.
Yeah. I think it's a bunch of things with the Valiant as well, though. I think the most important factor for a team's success in this meta is understanding the theory behind the meta and Sombra Goats in particular. Like having real smart players that know what to do on each of the roles. And that sounds super vague, but what I mean is like the ult economy situations and making decisions and when you should play aggressive and when you should be defensive and how the comps like play into each other, because there's goats, then there's Sombra Goats, then there's DPS, basically speaking, and like which maps are good for it, this kind of stuff, because decisions have to be made really quickly and you have to be able to make those decisions almost before anybody's called them. You have to start doing that.
I can't remember
Valiant
a stage
we've had so well.
I can't remember a stage we've had where map pool in a series has determined so many because we have so many maps.
It's
we have
so
many maps in this stage that are not like, oh well, you could do DPS on this one, or you could play like Sombra Goats, or you could play just regular goats. It's like, no, this is a hardcore goats map, or this is one where you like there's like it's like unforgiving the map pool, and it's like, well, flip a coin, what do we got this week? Like, oh, we have a few ones that go our way. Like,
so in the what is the map pool for when they play against the Spark?
Well, they have a top
I
because
think
they have
it's
London too.
Ilios, Volskaya, Hollywood, Dorado.
But you think they're going to be able to prepare, Josh, for both of those games? They're back-to-back days.
Yes, because the reason I think that,
okay,
they could lose to Spitfire. I actually would favor them more over Spark than over Spitfire. The reason for that is that Spitfire tend to, for these more recent teams that play a lot of Sombra Goats, people like New York and Valiant, they try and just match DPS and force as much DPS matchups as possible.
Mate,
and make
Prophet versus Shax. Shax is gonna get pooed on.
The Valiant series,
Prophet Sombra
series map set. Yeah, it's not great. The Valiant series map sets: Ilios, Volskaya, Hollywood, and Dorado.
Yeah, I think
Hollywood's a pretty strong goats map.
Yeah, Hollywood's an interesting one.
Volskaya, you can
also before third point, you can play a lot of DPS. So
yeah,
for third point of Hollywood.
Before third point, dude, you keep mishearing me. Is my mic working, Josh? Can you hear me correctly? Can you stop misrepresenting?
I'm asking you to clarify yourself because I'm just hearing weird shit.
They're gonna have to play some form of goats. You would think when you take point A on offense to point B.
I think you can play Sombra Goats. I think Sombra Goats on Volskaya is super powerful. Like on offensive point A and point B, there's mad snowball potential.
Dorado, you can play a ton of DPS as well.
Yeah.
That's not a bad map set.
Well, it's like, hey, if I'm a DPS team, I'd much rather have Hollywood than Eichenwald. And if I'm a DPS team, I'd much rather have Dorado than some other.
So remember when I said they had to
super lucky with the maps in this week?
Well, they're very lucky because in the Spitfire series,
they pretty much have the same maps.
Yes, they have Volskaya in Hollywood in that series as well.
And they have Nepal, which is a better DPS map.
Yeah, which is a better DPS map. So the map sets are actually incredible. The only one they're really forced into goats, I would say, is probably Gibraltar, but you could just play Sombra Goats there. So it's like, why not? The Valiants are going to have another 2-0 week potentially.
I think so. I really do believe that. And I think they've done a huge turnaround. And this is like the real deal where the Outlaws was the fake. And I think, hear me out though. because both of these teams improved because they understand the meta. The Houston Outlaws get the meta, and they have a good Sombra player, and Shax is good, and Dante is really fucking good. And so they understand how to play the Sombra Goats. But Houston Outlaws are still plagued by the same issues that they've always had, where they are anti-clutch, and they don't respect positioning, and they have very little discipline. But they have like these little ways of comboing with each other that work really well, and their Sombra is really successful, and they understand the meta. But they are just going to get punished by teams that also know how to play the meta because they don't respect the positioning at all. Whereas Valiant are really disciplined, and they know the meta, and they've got much better players than the Houston Outlaws. Valiant are the real deal.
Out of these three teams, who is the biggest disappointment from this week? Paris, Dallas, or the Titans?
Dallas, I'd say.
Dallas are just
0-2 week, and they don't win a map.
Like Paris have always looked mediocre throughout this entire season.
Yeah, but Paris, like, they had these stage playoffs, like, kind of like in their sights, and they just kind of they pissed it away. They lose to the Outlaws, and then all they have to do is beat Boston, who hadn't won a game, and they lose that one.
Yeah, they really fucked that up.
And with the Titans as well, I mean, it comes back to the classic age-old quote, ancient proverb, no king rules forever, my son.
Is that way to connect with our fan base, going for the ancient proverbs? Or,
I mean, and who said that?
Abraham Lincoln.
No, it was
George Adams.
Wasn't it Arthur's dad?
Yeah. It was Arthur's dad.
Arthur Dane.
I can't remember his name.
Wait, Arthur's from World of Warcraft?
Yeah.
Who the hell was it? Arthur's dad. It doesn't matter. But I feel like it's an inevitability with the Titans. There's only so long you can be dominant.
I don't think they could have sustained like what they were doing for the whole year.
No, it was inevitable.
It's impossible.
They can still get better.
Shout out to you, Josh. Shout out to you. You said that if there was an upset to be happening, it would be the Valiant beating the Titans. Now, I don't know if that was...
That's because Custa paid for his drinks the night before.
I didn't know if that was after you spoke to Custa or what. But
no, that was after Custa picked up the bill.
But you actually have an office
paid. Oh my god!
Office command in your chat.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't have the...
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, I think, were looking at that as well. Like, Yiska tweeted about it. Wolf said that there was potential for an upset. I mean, Sean, our producer for Watchpoint pre-show, was begging one of us to predict the Valiant because he was like, "I've got a feeling, man. I've got a feeling." And when I have a feeling,
I love Sean, dude.
Sean's
true. When Sean does have a feeling, it comes true. Like,
yeah. So, I think, but the important thing is not to overreact with the Titans. They're not looking great moving forwards, but they can still learn, and they're a really intelligent team, and they've been through a bunch of different meta shifts before. I could see them slowly developing into another really good team in this new meta as well. Yeah, it's just they haven't grasped it just yet.
But they don't have a ton of time for playoffs.
They've got a lot of time.
Doesn't matter. They're fucking in.
Yeah, they're already in, so they don't have to worry. All they have to do is get good.
I mean, for the stage. They're already in for the whole season.
They don't give a fuck about a stage.
They are not winning this stage.
No, I don't think they're winning this stage. I don't think they're winning this stage.
Oh, but you know what's interesting about that, though? Even though they might finish the season with a more dominant record than NYXL, having been like fantastic the whole year round, but without those 2 stage titles that NYXL won last year. Which is really interesting for like the historic argument of NYXL or Titans being the best team of all time. So actually, in terms of history, Titans really should be gunning for this stage 3 because there is no stage 4 championship.
And NYXL had a better, well, I mean, they have more maps because they have more games, but still, you can make the argument being that consistent over more games is harder than.
Yeah, I'd also make the argument that the teams were a lot weaker last year compared to New York.
No, yeah, I mean, dude, it's like how it is in real sports. Yeah, it's like. When people say like, oh yeah, Michael Jordan could score 50 points today, it's like, well, LeBron James exists. Look at that guy. Like,
and also, can we really make comparisons when the format has changed so radically?
Yeah. Well, I think that though you have to take that into account, but that's an even bigger argument for why Vancouver Titans are more impressive because they've had to be in the Pacific Division, which is really difficult.
Oh, the Pacific is brutal compared to the Atlantic.
The Atlantic is a cakewalk.
I saw Tasmo before their game against. I think it was the Hunters, and he was just like, "Man, why couldn't we be like a little bit further to the right in Texas, like the Atlantic?" Like, he's like, "We're just everybody in the Pacific is just out there killing each other, like, in the Atlantic's just like just moseying along, just hanging out, like."
It's like a game of Risk where some idiot tries to invade the north.
Where does Dallas? Yeah. Who's that guy? That was me. Where does Dallas go from here?
Oh boy.
Down.
Oh.
Well, like,
ooh, that one hurt.
How do they turn it around? Like,
I've talked to the Dallas Fuel guys quite a bit over the last week as well. I went out with AKM and Aero, and then I went out with Trill a couple of times as well.
You were the one with the time off this week, not Bren.
Yeah,
Bro,
and I still managed to fit in all my work.
Prisoner in my room. It's been hell.
What'd they have to say though?
So a bunch of shit that I won't talk about, but some stuff that I could allude to. They are struggling a lot, I think, with having a good system within their team. Like, I think they made so many changes coming into this year that the idea of like a hierarchy in terms of who's calling, who the leaders
like
are, what compositions they're going to play. Are they going to just play the comps that their coaches have said they're going to play? Are they going to try and flex on the fly? What is their style as a team? This kind of stuff has been a big...
It's not like boundaries set
when they play. Yeah. And this is why I think everyone brings up the overcoaching argument. I think they look poor for the supposed level of the coaches. I don't think they have too many coaches. I think they just maybe don't have that strong in-game voice that lets you flex on the fly. And so everyone's just following like a flowchart diagram.
I'm sure Johnny can talk to it too. It's like that in-game voice just like somebody just doesn't become that. Like you either have somebody who is that, or like you have somebody who is that, but you don't. Like, and that's like the hardest part about it is like,
well, there's a lot of like trust in there, and then there's a ton of confidence, and just you can't overthink stuff. And I think overthinking is the most dangerous aspect if you get too coached and you try to analyze too hard, and then you start hesitating because you're thinking rather than playing, and then you lose confidence because you're hesitating, and it's just like a downward spiral. And a leader can be good in that regard. A leader can be good, but a leader can also like put some doubt in you, because if you don't fully trust the leader who's testing about the coaches,
that's the worst.
Then you start, doubting the leader, and then the leader is like, "Hey, you're not listening, so I don't know if I can lead." And like,
I think a lot of what people don't understand.
You just need to play the game. You just need to play the game. Okay. Wild anecdote, and people are not going to believe me when I say this.
Yeah.
But I think that for some parts of last year, when I tried out for Team Sweden, I almost sometimes performed better during the tryouts than in the actual official matches. Because when I came in there, and I hadn't been on a contenders team for like almost a year, and I was just like, I'm just gonna go in here and just play my game and just fuck around in the tryouts. I played so confidently, and I played like not caring about anything, that I just
you just go in there.
I just came in and just swing it, dude. I just fucking balled out, and then I got on stage, and I had prepared like 12-14 hours a day. Like Bren knows, like I'd wake up at 8 a.m. and just play with people in Sweden, and I put so much hour and so much thinking into it that I started hesitating in Thailand. And if you hesitate as a tank in Thailand, like in Thailand specifically,
I
start hesitating, you're fucked.
I've spoken to a lot of pro players about this recently, about the concept of either overthinking or overcoaching as well, as something that we brought up a little bit earlier.
You can overpractice too.
I'm not gonna name. Yeah, absolutely you can. A big part of, I think, currently teams still haven't figured this out is where is the balance regarding coaching, regarding teaching your teams to actually think for themselves, and also practicing as well. I'm completely with you as well, Johnny. I don't know how publicly your opinion is on this, but in terms of over practicing, like you want quality practice with some VOD reviews sprinkled in between. You don't want to be slamming stuff 24/7 like scrims. It's counterproductive.
If I got to take back one thing from last year when I played in the World Cup, it would have been I should have practiced less.
Yeah, no, it's when I was coaching teams, you would practice.
All you want to do is build that intuition. You don't want to play by thinking, and that's why we're all dog shit at the game. Is because with the exception of Johnny, is that
throw lump Johnny in there. He's shit.
All right, we'll lump Johnny. Johnny's part of Plat chat now.
That's Reddit.
Even if you develop the skills to be able to think about the game, you don't have the intuition to just be able to pros don't think about the decisions that they're making. They've practiced enough and thought about the game enough and done the repetition so many times that they just intuitively react to things. And there's some thinking like basically.
Do you have any coaches in the league who used to play games professionally?
Yeah, some of the Korean players, I think.
Christopher, my buddy Christopher.
No. Yeah, like, it's a huge advantage, though, isn't it?
Because the one thing I don't understand is, like, I'm sure, Johnny, you can speak to this as well. The absolute worst feeling as a player is when you're sat there and you're losing scrims and you're not even gaining anything from it. You're not learning anything from it. But you know you're just sitting there and just playing and just losing. And I'm sure there's a ton of teams in the league. Oh my god,
we scrimmed Canada and we got full held so many times.
Yeah, and did you gain anything out of that?
No,
you
because
just ended up getting
it
frustrated
was nothing about the skill.
Each other, and then you're just mentally doomed after that.
It was nothing about even the skill. It was just like how we came into the scrim mentally that like affected our performance.
Teams in our league doing that 4 times a week.
Yeah.
Like, and then you're like, oh man, why don't they trust each other, get along? Because like the whole like dude, if I was coaching a team, we would practice probably less than everybody else, and then once a week we'd have some kind of like major team activity outside of games that forced everybody to like, you need to care about each other, you need to like be friends with the people you play with. Like, I feel like there's not enough of that going on, and that's where I think you see teams fall apart so quick. They come in, they lose 3 games, they're getting bad practice, they're getting angry with each other, nobody trusts anybody, and then the whole goes down the drain.
Oh, did you notice that aspect is one of the reasons that a lot of players that I've talked to, and also coaches, think that team houses are fantastic for Overwatch, because it forces these fairly socially awkward people to have to interact with each other outside of the game of Overwatch and develop that trust and that bond so that they feel comfortable speaking to each other. Because it's not just like people throw around words like trust and stuff and synergy, but what it really, like, to dig into specifics of it, if you're going to give someone a piece of feedback and critique what they did in a team fight, you are going to be able to approach it in a much better way if you understand the person and have talked to them a lot of times before, and like they know that you're friends with them. You can give that.
They know it doesn't come from a place of like malice, right? Like
you can give it in a better way. You can give it in a way that you know they'll receive it, and you can chat about these things without blowing something up, blowing it out of proportion. So it was something like 6 out of 8 of the playoff teams last year lived in team houses.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact number, but I was talking to Harsha about this, of like, oh, what do you feel like the team house difference is compared to previously? And he was like, I think it makes a huge, I think it was Harsha that I was talking to. He said he thinks it makes a huge difference.
Some of the best memories I have from playing in Misfits was when we'd organize boot camps and just play board games together. Because like we'd have so much fun and like learn about each other and like hang out as real friends, and like that just helps the in-game, because like you know how it's like to have friends and you play board games and you come up with dumb phrases and like different nicknames, and you integrate that into the scrims, and like you just take the friendships to the next level.
Calling everything dildo, the classic Swedish thing.
You don't become teammates. Like there's a difference. Like I teamed with a bunch of people like in my career that I just were not friendly with, and like as soon as they would leave the scrims, we'd be like, man, that guy blows. Like we were like, oh yeah, but the roster locks not to list. Like it's just different. Like when I was like buddies with we could easily have this conversation after. I'd be like, yo man, like you were just kind of like, what the hell were you doing there today? Like, and you just kind of laughing back and forth. Like it just makes working through all those weird times so much easier.
There are of course downsides if you have an absolute cunt on the team though. Like if you are forced to live with someone who's a proper dickhead, then I can imagine that would be horrifically grating, because now you just can't get away from them. But I think thankfully I think most of the teams that live in team houses actually get along fairly well and they're reasonable people. But if you were stuck with an absolute prick, I mean, that's, and I tell you what though, like ruin your mental.
Next year I think it'll be super interesting with teams like going like home and away, because traveling, like I know traveling with the guys that I coach, like that brought us way closer together, because you're in random cities, you don't really know anyone other than the people you're there with, like you don't have anybody to go out to eat with except those people. Like you're just kind of like you're just kind of stuck out on the road with them, where I feel like you can, well, I think it either goes one or two ways. You either like just get completely fed up really quickly, or you embrace the the bond in the group, and you just kind of ride it out.
Yeah. Mineral just came into the chat and was Misfits Bootcamp board games. Craigasm. He gets it. He gets it.
Yeah. We talked about Paris's playoff chances. So right now, okay, I did a little bit of an exercise on the side before. So right now in the standings, you have NYXL 1, Titans 2, Shock 3, Spark, Valiant, Shanghai Dynasty, LA Gladiators. Do you guys believe all of those teams are the teams in the playoffs?
For stage 3?
Yes.
Yeah, Shanghai plays Guangzhou twice. I think they're gonna win both.
I have one of those teams dropping out.
Gladiators could maybe drop out.
I have the Gladiators dropping out and the Outlaws going. I have the Outlaws getting the 5-2 and the Gladiators finishing at 4-3 here.
Yeah, who did the Outlaws have a very easy strength of schedule, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Gladiators play Vancouver, so that's gonna be bad.
It's incredible how much this season is determined by schedule and within each match the map pool.
Outlaws play Justice and the Defiant.
Okay, so they really should go 2-0. If they don't, they've
and then the Gladiators play Defiant and Titans. So I had the Gladiators going 1-1 with the Outlaws going 2-0.
So
even if the Outlaws finished 1-1, they still could get by the Gladiators via map differential.
One incredible game that we've mentioned briefly is London Valiant. Because if Spitfire lose to Valiant, they have to play Shock for the last game of the stage.
Yeah, I have
need
London
one more win.
3 and 4.
Spitfire.
I have those teams that are currently in the top 8. This standing as my top 8 teams. Not necessarily in this order, but these are the teams I think are currently in the top 8.
So what's interesting is when
New York, Titans, Shock, Spark, Valiant, Shanghai, Dynasty.
So when you take those teams at the end and you break it down by map differential and whatnot, you would have the Valiant as the 8 seed, the Outlaws as the 7, the Dynasty in 6, Dragons 5, your Vancouver Titans with the 4 seed.
That's nuts.
Spark, Shock, and NYXL, to where you would have the first round matchups could be pretty nutty. Like you'd have a Titans versus Dragons matchup, which could be pretty good. Spark plays the Dynasty in a rematch of that really close game. The Shock play the Outlaws, who they lost to in week 2.
Yeah, I don't think they lose to them again though.
NYXL Valiant.
NYXL Valiant would be a great game.
That would be a sick match.
Honestly, I've no idea what would happen in that game because as high as I am on the, I think their style is best against teams that don't really get how to play the Sombra Goats. I think New York play it in a weird way, but NYXL like slow play it. Whereas I think the best teams at the moment try to play it a little quicker and distract with.
Let's say for the sake of the argument, all the top teams advance, and you have a semifinals of NYXL Titans and then Spark versus Shock. What is our stage 3 finals matchup?
NYXL Shock, maybe. I don't know. I'm not that high on New York though. That's the thing. Like I think.
Yeah, I'm not either.
I think New York have been all right, but I don't think they have the best read on the meta.
But I don't feel great about the Titans. Like NYXL's Sombras looked pretty strong. I mean, outside of that first game, like.
Oh, I'd pick Titans over NYXL.
Lukewarm take.
What'd you say, Bren?
You want to hear my lukewarm take?
Yeah, let's hear the lukewarm one.
I think, given enough time, by the end of the stage, I think you'll have the top team being Shock, and the second best team being New York Excelsior.
Why?
Because I think if New York Excelsior manage to fix up a lot of the issues that they currently have playing Sombra Goats, it's looking like that my opinion of Sombra Goats has changed over time, just chatting to different players and teams and coaches, because everyone seems to be now of the opinion that it is the superior composition to play if you can play it to perfection against normal Goats right now. And I think New York Excelsior have the teamwork necessary. I mean, they've got the game sense necessary. And I think if they grind it up enough and Sabiobi gets better on the actual role itself, I think right now they would beat the Titans.
I also think I mean, I don't think we stress about it enough on the broadcast about how much Sabiel B brings to that team, just in terms of like, you know, how we talked about having a leader and somebody who pops off, and like, when does that guy never every time they need a clutch play, that guy always pops off. Yeah. Like, he never doesn't come through with some sick play. Like, having him back in that lineup, I think, is such a huge addition. Maybe not for the regular season, but like when you get into those like playoff matches, and you need somebody to just come in and just like.
And remember,
make plays.
They subbed him out for the playoffs last year.
Yeah,
he didn't get as much playtime.
Playoffs being loser's pick also changes things quite a lot, because Sombra Goats is map dependent. Like, Sombra Goats being the better comp, I think it only applies to situations in which you can effectively disengage from the Goats composition. Otherwise, you get run over a bit. You have to be able to kite their push and keep farming EMP, and then you can fuck them in the ult game. But those neutral fights, you have to be able to survive. And like, if we were still playing, I was gonna say King's Row there, but honestly, King's Row is pretty good for the Sombra as well.
Yeah, I think the thing, I held that opinion as well. I'm like, well, I think if a team really mastered triple time, triple support, let's say Shock, if they perfected their style, where you've got Choi playing off angles as well, they're spamming every angle so that they can't allow the Sombra to get any value out of hacks. I feel like that would beat out Sombra Goats. But the more I thought about it as well, if you had somebody who's playing Sombra incredibly well as on top of that, even if the mats don't suit it too much, I still feel like they would still be able to get insane value out of it, because your team would just work around it. The meta's shifted, it's changed. In this stage, it's all about pumping resources into either your Zarya player or your Sombra and leaving out your main tank high and dry.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think, though, we've ever had, like, I'm trying to think of like previous metas and whatnot, like a more impactful, disruptive hero than Sombra individually than Sombra. Yeah. I don't think we've ever like.
I mean, maybe people would say Brig. Brig literally killed Dive.
Yes, but I think, though, like, in terms of just disruption, and like, at least with Brig, your team could come out and do something, like, where you could like try and work around it or make a comp that worked around it. Against Sombra, like, there's no like,
what is the counterplay?
Like, where is the counterplay?
I think as well, teams have actually got a lot. I think teams have got a bit to go, honestly, regarding counterplay around Sombra comps as well. I don't think any team is, in my eyes, I think players could probably do a lot more, teams as a whole, when they're doing their VOD reviews, about learning individual tendencies of Sombra players.
That is the huge
so much more, because
you want to learn pathing of the enemy Sombras and spam those angles specifically. That's like, what the only team I've seen doing that a lot is Shock, and they fucked that up against Houston.
Yeah. I also think there's probably a world in which you can go back and watch Sombra players play on certain maps, and they use Translocator in the same spot many times. Yeah. So when you're in a position, let's say on Horizon Lunar Colony, and you see like the animation go that way, you know where they put the Translocator in that area of the map, and you can farm that. So I think there's some things like you can do against it. Like, I do think you get into a rock paper scissors scenario, though, where like I think DPS and just spreading out in general is pretty effective against Sombra, but Sombra just kind of like dunks on ball, like, because then you try and get aggressive and dive on them, and then she just hacks ball's dead, and then you're just kind of like out of luck. Like, it's
honestly one of the biggest changes as well, I think, to the reason the meta has shifted a lot is that before, when you had this like there was a cycle, but there was a cycle of like rock paper scissors comps, but you would always want to stick on Goats generally because the ults were so good at snowballing.
Yeah.
But I think what people have also figured out is ways of making DPS compositions work with the Sombra, and then you switch to Sombra Goats, and it doesn't matter that you don't have your Grav and your Shatter.
You just need EMP.
You just need the EMP. And so you can actually go from, it's kind of reintroduced the rock, paper, scissors element, because you can go from the scissors of DPS comp into the rock of or the paper of Sombra Goats without losing a beat, because you still have that EMP to be able to move forwards. Whereas previously people were playing like heavy DPS, like Pharah, like a Pharah Widow Hanzo kind of triple DPS or something like this, where the ults you basically have nothing that you can take forward into the next round. Whereas now people are integrating Sombra a lot more and getting better with Sombra and figuring out how to integrate her into the
thing
DPS
is if you play Sombra and you just have EMP, you can basically get like a shatter and a transcendence off of that EMP fight where you're just running into them, slaughtering them. You come back with those in the next fight. Guess what? You probably have a graviton surge at the beginning of that fight. Okay, sweet. We have trans, grav, and shatter. What else do we need? We're probably already getting halfway to another EMP. Like, you get an EMP every like 55 seconds. So it's like,
and teams wouldn't have been able to run Sombra Goats to this kind of level at the beginning of the league because they hadn't. Well, first of all, the speed boost changes I think were actually massive for reintroducing Sombra Goats because Goats can't get in your face as quickly anymore. But also, people got so much better at being able to just get kills just using grav, even if the other team uses trans. Like, at the beginning, they were relying on bomb grav so much it was like a core combo.
Well, now bomb is like used defensively.
Yeah, if it's used at all, right? Because it isn't used in Sombra Goats. So you just got so good at being able to win with grav that it changes the whole ult economy. Because now you win with grav, you win the next fight with EMP or shatter, and then then
they're forced to dump in ultimates earlier on because they need a fight win. And it's almost like it's like you need to dump ultimates in because you need a fight win because you need to stop the snowball. But then if you dump ultimates in, they just EMP or use like a grav, they win that fight. Now you're even in a worse spot. But then the problem is that you sit back and you wait for all 6 of your ultimates, so they have all 6 of theirs, they have EMP, you lose. So it's like, even now, like think about how much better the Sombras are now that they like EMP and then know where the Lucio is and they know they can get the hack off before the Lucio can hit the
Honestly,
ground.
I love that play that Prophet did because it makes so much sense and it's crazy that Ark was able to get away with that in the London Justice game. Because the hack time is 0.65 seconds and beat is 0.8. So in theory, if you both press the button at the same time, you should be able to hack a sound barrier every single time. But then he sound barriers on like a higher ledge to cut their cast time. Like, so dope.
Also need to make, before we're over this topic, we need to keep in mind as well that Sombra probably got introduced more because we started seeing a lot more DPS heavy compositions, and so playing Sombra Goats is just more versatile.
The dragons,
versus like Fars and stuff.
So
that's one of the primary reasons why the Titans probably would like to get good at Sombra is so they can counter heavy DPS teams more effectively rather than using it to counter other tank teams. I don't think that's their goal to begin with.
Matches of the week this week: Valiant versus Spark, Valiant versus Spitfire, Gladiators, Titans, Spitfire, Shock. Which one are you guys most excited for? I think Spark Valiant's gonna be the best game of the week.
I honestly think Spitfire Valiant because I think stylistically those teams are more interesting to see how it plays out. Especially if the Spitfire play like they did versus New York.
You know what?
I think that's going to be an incredible matchup.
That's going to be a fun match.
While I think Valiant versus Spark might be a bit, hey, we're a DPS comp and you're a GOAT comp and we're just going to poke until someone dies.
But I think that'll be really fun to see if Valiant can sustain it. Because if Valiant come out and they flop against Spark, then it's a bit like the situation with the Outlaws, where it's like, okay, maybe we hyped them too early.
But does that tell you more about the Spark then?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, it depends what happens in the match, right? Like, do Spark win by utilizing some different comps, or do they just crush them running Ghosts, or like, it depends how it happens.
Dude, I mean, looking at the Atlanta homestand for week 5, we're going to have a lot of the Stage 3 playoff picture decided this week. And what's interesting is a lot of the playoff teams do not travel.
So that's a nice way of saying the crap teams are in Atlanta.
Hey, look, the schedule's public. You can see it. But no, I mean, NYXL and Shanghai Dragons are the 2 teams that travel to Atlanta that are potentially playoff teams this stage, which I think will be really interesting if the playoff spots are decided for the most part. And then those teams have a full week to prepare for their one match. I think you can see some really good stage playoff games.
Yeah.
There's also a disadvantage for the NYXL and Shanghai Dragons that they have to travel. They don't get that week off, and the other teams can prepare, and then they have to come back and play.
Do the Florida Mayhem beat Atlanta?
Oh, the El Clasico. The El Clasico.
No, I know it sounds like a ridiculous question, but
in Atlanta.
Yeah, in Atlanta.
That would be bad.
Absolutely not. I feel like you get this. I feel like you get this weird like 50% damage buff when you're playing in your home.
Yeah, ground. we play a special custom game where the home team gets a 10% damage boost. And then
it feels like that. Honestly, there's no way in hell. Honestly, it's.
Bro, Atlanta could add such a good stage, man.
Yeah.
They got fucked by the schedule, but also they've missed the meta as well.
Yeah.
Like they cannot play Sombra Goats. It's tragic to watch.
Yeah.
And they play so slowly that Sombra Goats teams fuck them. They like get obliterated by Sombra Goats teams. So they were good playing against slow Goats teams like New York. And then as soon as they got good at that, nobody plays slow Goats anymore. Because if you're gonna play slow, you just play Sombra. So they actually.
I'm not gonna lie. I think the best match at the Atlanta homestand might be me versus the Fran.
Well, after what we saw last night, I hope that.
We'll
Philly Shanghai might be a good game.
Hey, you remember last week when we talked about the Outlaws potentially making season playoffs? The Valiant, they're actually in an even better spot than them.
The Valiant still has a lot of rough games in stage 4.
Okay, but they're at -7 map differential as compared to -19, so you have that advantage to work with.
Sure.
What is their overall record?
They have 7 wins now.
Huh.
So they are 7 and what? Let me find it. I just had it up and then I closed it.
No, wait. Valiant has a super easy schedule in stage 4.
They
only play Shocking Gladiators.
Dude,
they are 2 games behind the 12th spot.
Yeah.
They're gonna do it.
And so they play against Spark.
And they play the Defiant.
Spark and London, and then they play against Paris. You gotta think that's a win. Then Dallas. If Dallas is shit in the bed, that looks like a win. Seoul would be difficult. Then they play against Florida and Boston. And then Gladiators shock, but they don't need to win them. They're better than Gladiators right now. LA Valiant's best Gladiator.
If they beat Spark, Spitfire, and win that 3rd game, they will make the overall season playoffs. That'll put them at 10 wins at the end of this stage, which puts them almost in. Probably they're like right on the outside, like 13th at worst.
And still with Florida and Dallas and
still with a bunch of games to play.
Speaking of Dallas, here let's look at their schedule because
they're fucked. They're already out. They're gone. They're done.
Nah, they can still they can flip it.
Not mathematically, but look at those games. They are fucking
so let me
done.
read them out.
Oh, it's
New York,
it's not great.
They've got New York as the next one, and then we move into stage 4, and then they're up against the London Spitfire, and then next week, the following week, they're up against the Valiant, and then they're up against the Gladiators, and then they're up against the Shock, and then they're up against the Spark. And then it starts to get a little bit easier, and they play against the Charge.
And Atlanta.
And is it
the Valiant? The Valiant have a dude. I'm telling you, the Valiant. They look good.
So fucked. They're just gonna get mentally boomed as well.
Yeah, I think that the Valiant have Paris, Seoul, and Dallas, which I think both of those are winnable. Let's say at worst case you're 2-1.
Okay, so
Florida, like Boston, like these are teams that are already out pretty much.
Okay, so this might be a hot take, but we've seen how quick things can turn around for example, Valiant and the Outlaws. And I'm just throwing it out there. Dallas could potentially, if they utilize the stage break correctly, grab maybe 2 upset wins in stage 4 if they get onto like good momentum.
Listen, anything could happen in stage 4. Stage 4 is gonna be madness.
No, everyone's so down on Dallas, and I'm just like, we have seen it before. Could happen again.
It's weird too. Like, I feel like we don't talk about Philly at all, and they're in 8th.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not.
Somehow
it feels like they've been.
We talk about them as like I feel like we talk about them in the same like kind of space as like Dallas, let's say, but like they're still hanging around. Like,
well, I think Dallas are disappointing because we thought they'd be playoff contention. Philly are disappointing because we thought they'd be great, and they're not. So it's like they're both disappointing, but because our expectations for Philly were so much higher than Dallas in the first place, when they've both slipped, it's like Dallas are looking like they're going to go out. Philly is still middle of the pack.
If Philly stays up near their 8th spot, Philly plays Guangzhou, Chengdu, Houston, Toronto, Paris, Vancouver, and Seoul in stage 4. That is like a 5-2.
Is that Fusion?
Yeah, that is like a 5-2 type of stage for them. Like, if they get to 16 wins, they could even potentially sneak into like a 6th spot.
It depends what the meta is going to be like as well, obviously. I mean, things could certainly change between now and then.
Actually, how many wins would you probably need? The Spark are in 6th right now with 12.
So there's 28 games in the season. I reckon you'll actually have to go roughly even to be able to make that 12th place spot. I think
I'm saying to break in the top 6.
Yeah, you probably need like 16
6
wins.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
16.
Let's say the Spark
really
finished this stage with like 13 wins. They play Atlanta, so it's 14. Guangzhou 15.
Quick math.
Chengdu 16. Dallas, we'll give them that one. You're looking at, I mean, Spark at worst probably finishes with 17 wins.
It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, that top 6 is going to be tough to break into. Anyone else?
Are we done with
math?
math?
Talk about anyone else? Yeah, Johnny, you don't like the math segments, but
No, I don't like the math segments because I feel bad for our podcast listeners who are like doing mental gymnastics as they listen to me.
No, I mean they just need to add. I mean that's basically it.
I struggle with basic addition. Me and Bren did
anybody else got anything they want to talk about?
No. We've been on for like an hour and 6 minutes, and I feel like the only option we have is like Q&A for 5 minutes, or we just end it here.
I think we just end it.
Just end it.
Yeah,
I think we end it.
We've been doing podcasts for 4 hours now, so
yeah, that's crazy. You guys record that other podcast with, sponsored by Golden Boy before this.
Yeah, I'm gonna sponsored by Golden Boy.
Yeah, it's Underlords.
We call it the T-Mobile podcast.
Yeah, the T-Mobile podcast. No, this is fun. It's good to actually have you, Bren. You didn't really contribute much. But
what the fuck you talking about? I spoke more than you did.
Yeah, he's our insider.
Yeah, he's our insider.
Actually, if you take away every time you say the word like, I actually did contribute probably about 200% more than you did. So
Turn up.
I saw someone in the chat say that, and I was like, "Well, I mean, as I just said,
Bren stealing points
stop.
from Johnny's tweets, and then disses from the chat."
Yeah, Bren has no original thoughts of his own.
Yeah,
that does happen though. Like when you subconsciously acknowledge things or you read things, and then I guess you just kind of
You assimilate them.
yeah
you just copy them.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
All right, we good? We good?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
End it,
Guys,
Matt.
we're good.
End it, Matt.
What do you mean? What am I ending?